The journey of writing this book really gave me a deep appreciation for the struggle of representation in America. I grew up in the Los Angeles area in a place that was almost 100% Mexican, and I remember thinking growing up that diversity around the neighborhood was what part of Mexico your parents were from. It wasn't until I moved to the East Coast for graduate school that I realized that Latino-ness might have a different hue. All of a sudden I'd walk around the city and people might guess, or people might ask me what part of Puerto Rico I was from. And it was in thinking about how amazingly different this experience of being Latino was for me on the East Coast is that I began to think about how incredibly odd that we all still belong to the same category. Someone that might have just migrated from Mexico one day was in the exact same category with someone whose grandparents were from Puerto Rico. And the food was different, the experiences were different, perhaps ways of speaking Spanish was quite different as well. From Washington's perspective, they tended to think of Chicanos as a real regional issue. It was something for state policy. But Chicanos realized if they could reframe their issues and not necessarily just make them Mexican-American issues, but perhaps join with Puerto Ricans, then that was something that Washington now needed to pay attention to, because Hispanics connoted a national minority, East Coast and West Coast. It wasn't just a regional phenomenon. When you now say, for example, that Hispanics are a 50 million plus population, that's power. Striving towards one national image, while it gives you power, you also run the risk of homogenizing incredibly important differences. I often get the question, what term is better, Hispanic or Latino? The Hispanic term is mostly a sense of community through a connection to Spain. It's the notion that Latin Americans are tied culturally to Spaniards. The term Latino is mostly defined as a sense of community through a history of colonization from Spain. And so the basis of unity is politically different on both levels. But now many of the major Hispanic or Latino institutions use both interchangeably. They might call themselves Latino in one press release and then Hispanic on their website. And it speaks, I think, to the way that the category has become so deeply ingrained in much of American life. That underlying argument was still around. I think before it was easy to just sort of think that Hispanic category was something that was imposed on Latinos in the United States by the government or by bureaucrats, but it was in understanding the stories and the struggle of activists to actually get attention onto these issues that I realized that there's more of a story here about representation and about a fight for recognition.